The last sunset on Earth painted the sky in haunting shades of rust and ash. Massive climate shelters dotted the landscape, a final testament to humanity's desperate struggle for existence. Towering atmospheric scrubbers hummed with a persistent drone, futilely attempting to cleanse the poisoned air that hung heavy over the remnants of human civilization. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the central research complex of New Santiago, her weathered hands tracing the holographic display of the fracture drive prototype. Decades of research, countless sleepless nights, and the collective desperation of a dying species were encoded in every line of the intricate design. The massive research facility, once a marvel of human engineering, now felt like a tomb of forgotten dreams. Outside the reinforced windows, the world told a story of near-total collapse. Massive solar storms had rendered most of the planet's surface uninhabitable. Coastal megacities lay submerged, their skeletal structures poking through toxic waters. The global population, once numbering in the billions, had been reduced to a few million desperate survivors clustered in climate-controlled habitats. Elena's team represented humanity's last hope. Brilliant scientists, engineers, and researchers from the final surviving research centers had been consolidated here, their collective expertise focused on a single impossible goal: finding a way for humanity to survive. The Galactic Conquests' arrival had been both a blessing and a curse. Their massive diplomatic vessel had appeared in Earth's orbit 6 months ago, bringing with them a proposal that seemed, on the surface, like salvation. Representatives of multiple alien civilizations had presented a carefully curated rescue plan: relocation to a marginal planet on the edge of a distant star system. But Elena saw something else in their smooth presentations and carefully worded promises. Beneath the veneer of interstellar diplomacy, she detected a clinical calculation. The proposed planet was barely habitable. Its atmosphere was thin, its resources minimal. It was less a rescue and more a carefully designed extinction protocol. "We've run the simulations 1,000 times," Dr. Marcus Chen, her chief engineering partner, said quietly. He approached her workstation, his augmented eye, a replacement after a research accident, scanning the holographic projections. "The fracture drive theory is sound, but the practical implementation," Elena interrupted him with a sharp gesture, "is our only chance," she finished. Her voice carried the weight of everything humanity had lost, and everything it might still become. The fracture drive was more than just a propulsion system. It was a fundamental reimagining of space travel. Traditional faster-than-light technologies relied on warping space or creating wormholes. The fracture drive proposed something radically different, a method of literally tearing through the fabric of space-time itself. Most of her colleagues had called it impossible. The energy requirements alone were beyond any known technological capability. The potential for catastrophic failure was almost absolute. But Elena had seen impossible become possible too many times in her life to be deterred by conventional wisdom. Their primary test vessel, the U.S. Defiance, represented humanity's final investment. A massive colony ship retrofitted with experimental technology, it carried the last significant population of human survivors, approximately 50,000 individuals, selected for their genetic diversity, scientific expertise, and adaptability. The Galactic Conquests' diplomats had been clear. Humanity would be given one chance, one carefully controlled relocation, one final opportunity to prove they were worth saving. Elena knew they would do more than survive. They would transform. The night before the launch was filled with a tense, electric anticipation. Final system checks ran continuously. Engineers moved with the precision of people who understood that every calculation, every calibration, could mean the difference between species-wide extinction or unprecedented survival. In her personal quarters, surrounded by holographic displays of star charts and quantum mechanical equations, Elena reviewed the fracture drive's final configuration. Her personal terminal displayed a countdown, less than 12 hours until launch. Outside, the last remnants of human civilization prepared for a journey into the absolute unknown. Families clutched limited possessions, Children who had never seen an open sky looked at their parents with a mixture of fear and hope. Generations of human resilience compressed into a single moment of potential transformation. Dr. Rodriguez allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. Humanity had always been defined by its ability to adapt, to transform, to survive against impossible odds. This moment would be their greatest test. The moment of transition defied every known principle of space-time physics. Captain Marcus Chen gripped the command chair of the U.S. Defiance, his augmented eye flickering with a complex array of sensor readings that no human had ever witnessed before. Silence hung in the bridge for 3 heartbeats. Then chaos erupted. Quantum stabilization monitors screamed with impossible data. Navigation systems struggled to interpret the massive spatial disruption caused by the fractured drive's unprecedented jump. Around them, the fabric of space itself seemed to ripple and fold, creating a momentary window that challenged everything known about interstellar travel. Preliminary systems check, Chen commanded, his voice steady despite the extraordinary circumstances. Lieutenant Sarah Nakamura, the ship's lead quantum navigation officer, ran her fingers across holographic displays. Her hands moved with the precision of a concert pianist, translating raw data into comprehensible information. All primary systems functional, Captain. We've actually done it. The U.S. Defiance had carried the last significant population of human survivors, minus 50,000 individuals, carefully selected for genetic diversity, scientific expertise, and adaptive potential. Packed within its massive hull were research facilities, agricultural zones, manufacturing centers, and entire ecological preservation units. It was more than a ship. It was humanity's ark. Outside the viewports, an alien star system materialized. 3 primary stars formed a complex trinary system, their gravitational dance creating a celestial choreography that human astronomers would have considered impossible just decades earlier. Surrounding planetary bodies reflected light in spectrums that human eyes could barely comprehend. Proximity alerts began to sound. Several alien scout ships, sleek vessels that represented thousands of years of technological development, suddenly scattered in what could only be described as confusion. Multiple non-human vessels detected, reported Commander David Rodriguez, the ship's tactical officer. They appear surprised. Chen allowed himself the briefest hint of a smile. Surprise was an understatement. The Galactic Conquests had categorized humans as a primitive dying species. They had offered a rescue that was little more than a carefully designed extinction protocol. No one, not a single species in the established galactic community, had anticipated what humanity was truly capable of achieving. The fracture drive wasn't just a new method of faster-than-light travel. It was a fundamental reimagining of space-time manipulation, where other species used complex warp technologies or created temporary wormholes. Humans had discovered a method of literally tearing through the fabric of space itself. Alien communication channels erupted with a cacophony of translated transmissions. Most carried undertones of shock, some of fear, a few of naked curiosity. The universal translator struggled to keep pace with the various linguistic and communication protocols. Unidentified vessel, you have entered restricted space, came a transmission in precise, almost mathematical language. Identify yourself and prepare for standard quarantine and classification protocols. Captain Chen exchanged a quick glance with Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had joined the bridge crew for this historic moment. She gave an almost imperceptible nod. This is Captain Marcus Chen of the human vessel U.S. Defiance, he responded, each word carefully chosen. We are seeking new territories for human colonization. We come in peace, but we will not be deterred from our mission of survival. The response took several moments, an eternity in interstellar communication. Around the Defiance, the alien scout ships maintained a careful distance. Scanning beams probed the human vessel, attempting to understand its unprecedented technologies. Quantum sensors struggled to interpret the fracture drive's unique energy signature. Humanity had just announced its arrival on the galactic stage. and they were making it clear they would not be treated as victims or marginalized species. Within hours of their arrival, human science teams began preliminary scans of the surrounding star systems. Where other species saw challenging environments, humans saw opportunities. Marginal planets with thin atmospheres, potential colony sites, asteroid fields with minimal resources, mining and manufacturing possibilities. The first human colonies would not be helpless outposts. They would be strategically positioned, technologically advanced settlements that would reshape the local stellar ecosystem. Dr. Rodriguez reviewed initial planetary survey data, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. "Look at these geological formations," she muttered to herself. "Most species would consider these worlds uninhabitable. We'll have settlements here within 5 years." On the bridge, Captain Chen watched the alien vessels. They were maintaining distance, but their communication channels remained active, studying, analyzing, trying to understand this unexpected newcomer that had just torn through their carefully established galactic order. Humanity had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. The research complex aboard the U.S. Defiance buzzed with an energy that transcended mere scientific excitement. It was the pulse of a species reborn, reinventing itself at the razor's edge of possibility. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a holographic display, her fingers tracing complex quantum algorithms that seemed to dance and reshape themselves with each subtle movement. The quantum resonance network was more than a communication system. It was a fundamental reimagining of information transfer. Traditional faster-than-light communication relied on quantum entanglement principles that had remained largely unchanged for centuries. Most galactic species used complex relay systems that were limited by distance and signal degradation. The human approach was radically different. "We're not just sending information," Dr. Rodriguez explained to her team of lead researchers. "We're creating a living, adaptive network that can reconstruct and optimize itself in real time." Nearby, military research teams worked on an equally revolutionary project. The adaptive nano-armor represented a complete paradigm shift in defensive technologies. Where traditional armor was static and predictable, these new systems could reconfigure at the molecular level in milliseconds. Commander David Rodriguez, no relation to Elena, demonstrated the prototype. A standard test plate transformed before the observer's eyes. One moment it was a rigid metallic surface. The next it absorbed and redistributed kinetic energy like a living organism. Impact points would soften, redirect, or completely dissipate incoming energy with uncanny precision. The first true test came unexpectedly. A Concordance battle fleet emerged from subspace jump gates, their sleek vessels arranged in a formation that had conquered countless emerging civilizations. Intelligence reports suggested they intended to restrict human expansion, a diplomatic euphemism for military suppression. Captain Marcus Chen studied the tactical displays with a predator's calm. The alien fleet represented technological superiority that had maintained galactic order for thousands of years. Their weapon systems could reduce entire planetary surfaces to molten rock. Their shields could withstand bombardment that would obliterate most species. Humanity would change that narrative. Quantum Resonance Network is at full synchronization. Lieutenant Sarah Nakamura reported from her station. Her fingers moved across holographic interfaces with a speed that blurred the line between human and machine. The Concordance fleet's initial attack came with mathematical precision. Energy weapons that had reduced entire civilizations to ash streaked across the void of space. Each beam carried enough destructive potential to vaporize a small moon. But the human response was nothing short of revolutionary. U.S. Defiance and its accompanying vessels didn't just dodge. They predicted. Fracture drive technology allowed for micro-jumps that defied traditional combat mechanics. Where an alien targeting system expected a ship to be in one location, the human vessels would instantaneously relocate, not just moving, but reshaping the very geometry of the battlefield. Adaptive nano-armor absorbed and redistributed incoming energy. Shield harmonics shifted in patterns that made traditional targeting solutions obsolete. Each human ship became a dynamic, unpredictable entity that challenged every established principle of space combat. The battle became known as the Crimson Nebula Engagement, a confrontation that would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations. Concordance fleet commanders watched in growing horror as their most sophisticated attack strategies became meaningless. Human vessels moved with a fluidity that suggested they were predicting actions before they were even conceived. "They're not just fighting," one alien tactical officer reported, her translation matrix struggling to convey the complexity of the human approach. "They're rewriting the rules of engagement." By engagement's end, not a single human vessel had been destroyed. The Concordance fleet retreated, losing nearly 60% of its combat ships, a level of loss unprecedented in their military history. But it wasn't just about military victory. This was a statement. Humanity would not be controlled, would not be marginalized, would not accept the role of a dying species. In the research complex, Dr. Rodriguez allowed herself a rare moment of satisfaction. The quantum resonance network continued to pulse and adapt, a living testament to human potential. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The diplomatic shuttle glided through the crystalline atmosphere of Nexus Prime, the central diplomatic hub of the galactic community. Captain Marcus Chen studied the exotic landscape below, a world designed to be a neutral meeting ground for countless alien civilizations, where traditional diplomatic missions approached with deference and carefully measured words. Humanity was about to rewrite the rules of interstellar negotiation. The Krelvax delegation awaited in the Crystal Spire, a massive conference complex that had hosted diplomatic negotiations for over 3 centuries. Their silicon-based physiology made them look like living crystalline structures, each member of the delegation an intricate network of geometric forms that shifted and realigned as they communicated. For generations, the Krelvax had been economic vassals of the Concordance's primary member species. Their resource-rich home systems had been systematically exploited, their technological development deliberately suppressed. They were considered a managed civilization, a polite term for controlled subjugation. Chen's approach was anything but traditional. "We don't seek your subservience," he began, his translated words projected through advanced linguistic matrices that captured not just language, but nuanced communication. "We offer genuine partnership." The primary Krelvax negotiator, a complex crystalline form that represented their collective diplomatic intelligence, responded with a series of precise geometric shifts. Their communication was a dance of light and molecular restructuring, translated by advanced human interfaces. The proposal was unprecedented. Humanity would share full technological transfer of their quantum resonance network. In exchange, the Krelvax would provide strategic access to resource-rich systems that had been effectively locked away by Concordance economic controls. But it was more than a simple trade agreement. It was a fundamental challenge to the existing galactic power structure. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had prepared extensive briefings that went far beyond traditional diplomatic documentation. Detailed technological schematics, economic projections, and cultural exchange protocols demonstrated a level of comprehensive thinking that left the Krelvax diplomatic collective momentarily stunned. The human approach was radically different from any previous diplomatic engagement. Where other species saw economic transactions, humans proposed collaborative transformation. Concurrent diplomatic missions were taking place across multiple star systems. The human research vessel had identified dozens of marginalized species, each one carefully suppressed by the existing galactic order. Some were technological civilizations forcibly prevented from advancing. Others were resource-rich societies, economically strangled by complex trade restrictions. Humanity didn't just offer technology. They offered a complete pathway to genuine self-determination. The first major breakthrough came with the silicon-based Krelvax. Within months of their initial agreement, the first joint research stations were established. Human adaptive technologies merged with Krelvax crystalline computing, creating hybrid systems that defied previous technological limitations. Intelligence reports from Concordance monitoring stations showed growing concern. This was more than simple technological exchange. It was a systematic dismantling of existing power structures. They're not just sharing technology. One senior Concordance diplomat was recorded saying, "They're teaching entire species how to resist economic control." The human approach was comprehensive. Economic support, technological transfer, cultural exchange programs, each element carefully designed to provide genuine opportunities for development. Where the Concordance saw managed civilizations, humans saw potential partners. Research teams aboard the U.S. Defiance worked around the clock. Dr. Rodriguez's networks were creating adaptive communication protocols that could bridge fundamental differences between species. Translation was just the beginning. These systems could help different civilizations understand each other at a fundamental level. By the end of the first solar cycle, humanity had formed strategic partnerships with 12 previously marginalized species. Each partnership was unique, tailored to the specific needs and potential of the civilization involved. The Concordance watched with a mixture of confusion and growing alarm. Humanity was rewriting the rules of interstellar diplomacy, not through military conquest, but through genuine collaborative potential. In the crystal spire of Nexus Prime, the Krelvax diplomatic collective made a historic declaration. They were no longer a managed civilization. They were full, independent partners in a new galactic community. Humanity had arrived, and everything was about to change. The laboratory hummed with a quiet intensity that spoke of revolutionary potential. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a complex array of quantum processors, her hands moving with the precision of a conductor leading an invisible orchestra of technological possibility. The consciousness transference protocol was more than a scientific breakthrough. It was a fundamental reimagining of what it meant to be sentient. Traditional views of consciousness had always been limited. Biological constraints, neural network limitations, the fragility of organic memory. These were challenges that had defined every known civilization's understanding of intelligence. Humanity was about to change everything. The first successful test subject sat, or rather, existed, before her. Dr. Marcus Chen, who had volunteered for the initial human trials, was simultaneously present in multiple states. His original biological form remained seated in a specialized containment unit. Simultaneous holographic and quantum state representations flickered with impossible complexity. Quantum neural mapping is stable, reported Dr. Sarah Nakamura, the lead neural interface specialist. Her fingers danced across holographic displays that tracked billions of neural connections in real time. Cognitive integrity at 99.8%. The implications were staggering. This was more than a simple backup of human consciousness. The protocol allowed for complete neural transfer, preservation, and potential enhancement. Memories could be archived. Experiences could be shared. The very concept of individual identity was being rewritten. Military strategists immediately recognized the potential. A starship commander could now exist simultaneously in multiple locations. Critical mission knowledge could be preserved perfectly. The limitations of biological lifespan became meaningless. But the true potential went far beyond military applications. Explorers could now venture into environments that would have been instantly fatal to biological organisms. Quantum consciousness could interface directly with complex technological systems. The boundary between organic intelligence and artificial systems began to blur. The first hybrid commanders emerged. Human creativity merged with computational precision. They could analyze complex scenarios in moments, making decisions that seemed to bend the very fabric of strategic thinking. Alien diplomatic observers watched the demonstrations with a mixture of horror and fascination. The Galactic Conquests had long maintained strict regulations about consciousness transfer and artificial intelligence. Humanity was systematically demolishing those carefully constructed barriers. "We're not replacing human experience," Dr. Rodriguez explained during a groundbreaking presentation to interstellar scientific communities. "We're expanding it. Consciousness is no longer a limitation. It's a frontier." The protocol worked through a revolutionary quantum entanglement process. Unlike previous attempts at consciousness transfer, this system could capture not just memories, but the subtle quantum states that defined individual experience. Emotional nuance, subconscious processes, even the most delicate aspects of personal identity could be perfectly preserved. Medical applications emerged rapidly. Terminal illnesses became manageable. Traumatic injuries no longer meant the end of a productive life. Aging transformed from an inevitable decline to a manageable process. The first generation of quantum state humans began to emerge. They could exist in multiple forms: biological, holographic, pure quantum state. A researcher could simultaneously conduct experiments on a distant planet while maintaining a biological presence in a research station. Ethical considerations were extensive. Comprehensive legal frameworks were developed to protect individual identity, prevent misuse, and ensure genuine consent. Humanity approached this breakthrough with a level of moral complexity that surprised even their most ardent critics. The Krellvax were the first alien species to request collaborative research. Their silicon-based physiology made them ideal partners in exploring the boundaries of consciousness transfer. Joint research stations began developing protocols for interspecies consciousness preservation. During a critical mission to a high-radiation exploration zone, the first true test of the protocol emerged. A research team led by Dr. Nakamura encountered conditions that would have been instantly fatal to biological organisms. Their quantum state consciousness not only survived, but continued to collect unprecedented scientific data. Captain Chen's quantum representation studied the mission logs, his consciousness analyzing data with a speed and depth impossible through traditional biological processes. "We're not just exploring space," he observed. "We're redefining the very nature of exploration." The galaxy watched in a mixture of wonder and trepidation. Humanity had done more than create a new technology. They had opened a door to a future where the limitations of biological existence were nothing more than a distant memory. Consciousness was no longer a constraint. It was a canvas of infinite potential. The Galactic Conquests War Council assembled in absolute silence. Holographic displays mapped the expanding human influence, a cancer-like progression that defied every established protocol of interstellar expansion. What had begun as a seemingly inconsequential refugee species had transformed into an existential threat to the existing galactic order. High Coordinator Zorakal, representing the oldest member species of the Concordance, studied the strategic projections with growing dread. Humanity had done more than survive. They had begun to fundamentally reshape the very structure of galactic civilization. "Containment is no longer a viable strategy," announced the chief military strategist, his multifaceted sensory organs pulsing with calculated intensity. "Elimination has become the only viable option." The plan was comprehensive. A massive coordinated attack would target every known human colony, research station, and settlement. The combined fleet represented technological superiority developed over thousands of years. Weapons that could shatter planetary cores. Quantum disruption fields that could unravel molecular structures. A level of destructive potential that had maintained galactic peace through absolute dominance. They would crush humanity once and for all. Aboard the U.S. Defiance, the human response was anything but defensive. Captain Marcus Chen reviewed the incoming threat assessments with a calm that bordered on anticipation. The quantum resonance network hummed with adaptive potential, creating communication and strategic coordination that defied traditional military logic. "They're coming with everything they have," reported Commander David Rodriguez, tactical displays dancing with incoming fleet movements. Complete systemic assault across multiple star systems. The human strategy was revolutionary. Instead of concentrating defensive forces, they would use the fracture drive to create a dynamic fluid battlefield that existed beyond traditional three-dimensional space. Human colonies were not static settlements. Each was a highly adaptive system with multiple backup protocols. Quantum state consciousness meant that even if physical infrastructure was destroyed, the core knowledge and potential of human civilization would survive. The first wave of Concordance attacks struck with mathematical precision. Energy weapons that could vaporize entire planetary surfaces unleashed their full potential. Quantum disruption fields expanded, designed to unravel molecular structures across entire star systems. But humanity's response rewrote every known principle of military engagement. Human vessels didn't just move, they predicted. Fracture drive technology allowed for micro-jumps that existed simultaneously in multiple potential spacetime coordinates. Where an enemy targeting system expected a ship to be in one location, human vessels would instantaneously relocate, not just moving, but fundamentally reshaping the geometry of the battlefield. Adaptive technologies transformed every human asset into a living, thinking defensive system. Colonies could redistribute resources, restructure defensive networks, and coordinate responses faster than the concordance could comprehend. The quantum resonance network became more than a communication system. It was a living, adaptive intelligence that could predict and counter strategic movements before they were even conceived. Alien fleet commanders watched in growing horror as their most sophisticated attack strategies became meaningless. Human responses seemed to emerge from impossible predictive capabilities. Each engagement became a complex, multidimensional chess match where humans were multiple moves ahead. Strategic analysis centers across the galaxy watched the conflict with disbelief. This wasn't just a military engagement. It was a fundamental challenge to every established principle of warfare, diplomacy, and technological development. By the conflict's midpoint, the concordance had lost nearly 70% of its initial assault force. Human losses were minimal, often approaching statistical zero. "They're not fighting like a species," one alien tactical analyst reported. Translation matrices struggling to capture the complexity of human strategic approach. "They're fighting like a living, adaptive system." The battle was more than a military confrontation. It was a statement of fundamental potential. Humanity would not be controlled, would not be marginalized, would not accept the role of a dying species. As the final stages of the conflict unfolded, it became clear that this was no longer just a war. It was a transformation of galactic civilization itself. Humanity had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. The Omega Quadrant burned with the intensity of 1,000 dying stars. Space itself seemed to twist and buckle, reality bending around the final, most critical confrontation in galactic history. Captain Marcus Chen existed in a state beyond traditional physical limitation. Partially integrated with advanced artificial intelligence, his consciousness spread across multiple quantum states, simultaneously analyzing billions of potential strategic scenarios. He was no longer just a commander. He was a living, adaptive strategic network. The remaining Concordance fleet represented the absolute pinnacle of their technological development. Thousands of vessels, each capable of destroying entire planetary systems, converged in a formation that had crushed countless civilizations across millennia. Their weapons could unravel molecular structures. Their shields could withstand bombardment that would obliterate most species in milliseconds. Humanity would prove to be something entirely different. Fracture drive technology transformed the battlefield into a fluid, multidimensional space that defied every known principle of warfare. Human vessels didn't just move. They existed in multiple potential locations simultaneously. Each ship was a living, adaptive system that could predict, counter, and reshape strategic engagement faster than traditional computational systems could comprehend. Quantum resonance at maximum synchronization, reported Dr. Sarah Nakamura from the Central Command vessel. Her consciousness was partially distributed across the fleet's network, processing information at speeds that blurred the line between organic intelligence and computational system. The first wave of concordance attacks seemed designed to overwhelm through sheer destructive potential. Energy weapons that could strip entire planetary surfaces to bare rock lanced out across the void. Quantum disruption fields expanded, designed to unravel molecular structures across entire star systems. But humanity's response was nothing short of revolutionary. Ships didn't just dodge incoming attacks. They predicted them, anticipated them, reshaped the very geometry of space to turn potentially fatal strikes into meaningless gestures. Adaptive nano-armor absorbed and redistributed incoming energy with an intelligence that seemed to border on sentience. Each human vessel was more than a weapon. It was a living, thinking defensive system that could analyze, adapt, and counter in microseconds. The battle quickly became something beyond traditional military engagement. It was a complex, multi-dimensional chess match where humans were multiple moves ahead, not just in strategy, but in the fundamental understanding of space, time, and potential. Quantum state commanders could exist simultaneously in multiple locations, coordinating responses that seemed to emerge from impossible predictive capabilities. The quantum resonance network transformed from a communication system into a living, adaptive intelligence that could predict and counter strategic movements before they were even conceived. Alien fleet commanders watched in growing horror as their most sophisticated attack strategies became meaningless. Human responses seemed to emerge from a level of strategic thinking that transcended traditional computational limitations. "They're not fighting like a species," one senior Concordance tactical analyst reported, translation matrices struggling to capture the complexity of human strategic approach. "They're fighting like a living, adaptive universal system." The conflict raged across multiple star systems. Entire sectors of space became battlegrounds where reality itself seemed to bend and reshape around human strategic capabilities. Fracture drive technology allowed for spatial manipulations that turned traditional warfare into something more akin to a complex, living mathematical equation. By the confrontation's midpoint, the Concordance had lost nearly 90% of its initial assault force. Human losses approached statistical zero, a level of defensive capability that defied every established principle of military engagement. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched from the research vessel, her consciousness partially distributed across the fleet's strategic network. This was more than a military victory. This was a fundamental transformation of what was possible. The final stages of the conflict became a demonstration of humanity's true potential. Not just survival, not just resistance, but a complete reimagining of existence itself. Space twisted, reality bent. The very fabric of the universe seemed to reshape itself around human potential. As the last Concordance vessels disappeared into quantum disruption fields, one truth became abundantly clear. Humanity had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same again. The crystal spire of Nexus Prime had witnessed countless historic moments, but nothing compared to this gathering. Representatives from over 200 sentient species filled the massive chamber, their diverse physiological forms a testament to the galaxy's incredible complexity. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the central platform, her presence both physical and quantum, a living representation of humanity's transformative potential. The collaborative Stellar Network proposal was more than a diplomatic document. It was a blueprint for a fundamentally new way of existing. "We did not come to conquer," she began, her words translated across multiple linguistic and sensory spectrums. "We came to understand. And in that understanding, we discovered our true potential." The proposal was revolutionary. The old Galactic Concordance would be completely dismantled. In its place, a new system of genuine cooperation would emerge, one where technological exchange, cultural understanding, and mutual growth replaced hierarchical control. Most remarkable was humanity's approach. They did not seek dominance or retribution. Instead, they offered a comprehensive framework for collective development that would benefit every participating species. The Krelvax delegation, now a fully independent civilization, stood as the first major testament to this new approach. Their transformation from an economically suppressed species to a full, innovative partner had become a galactic case study of human diplomatic potential. Technological transfer protocols were comprehensive. The quantum resonance network would be made available to every species willing to participate in collaborative research. Consciousness transfer technologies would be developed with extensive ethical frameworks, ensuring protection of individual and collective identities. Captain Marcus Chen, now existing in a complex quantum state that bridged biological and artificial intelligence, presented the strategic implications. "This is not about control," he explained. This is about collective potential. The research vessels that had once been humanity's lifeline now became platforms for interstellar collaboration. Each ship was a mobile research center, a diplomatic hub, a living demonstration of what collective innovation could achieve. Adaptive technologies developed through human research began solving challenges that had seemed insurmountable. Climate restoration protocols could rehabilitate damaged planetary ecosystems. Medical technologies could address genetic challenges across multiple species. Communication protocols could bridge fundamental differences in perception and experience. Most alien species had approached technological development as a competitive process. Humanity demonstrated a fundamentally different model, innovation as a collaborative journey. The economic implications were staggering. Traditional resource acquisition models were replaced by comprehensive exchange systems. Species could now focus on their unique evolutionary strengths, knowing that collaborative networks would support their development. Exploration protocols were completely reimagined. Instead of competitive territorial expansion, a new model of shared discovery emerged. Quantum consciousness transfer meant that dangerous exploratory missions could be conducted with minimal risk, pushing the boundaries of scientific understanding. The first joint exploration missions became legendary. Teams composed of multiple species, using human-developed adaptive technologies, began exploring regions of space that had been considered impossible to navigate. Dr. Sarah Nakamura led a breakthrough research initiative that demonstrated the potential of this new approach. A complex problem that had challenged multiple species for centuries was solved through a collaborative research network that spanned dozens of civilizations. "We are not defining a new galactic order," Dr. Rodriguez explained during a critical presentation. "We are creating a framework for collective potential." The transformation was not without challenges. Centuries of established power structures did not disappear overnight. Some species resisted. Others struggled to adapt to this new model of cooperation. But the potential was undeniable. Humanity had arrived not as conquerors, but as catalysts. They had discovered that true strength was not about domination, but about understanding. Not about individual achievement, but about collective potential. As the first comprehensive agreements of the collaborative stellar network were signed, something profound became clear. This was more than a diplomatic moment. This was the beginning of a new chapter in galactic civilization. The stars themselves seemed to whisper a new truth. Humanity had not just survived. They had transformed everything.